Hello and welcome to another episode of If You Know Your History with me, Jonny Owen, and my good friend Mark Webster. And it's Fergie 4, Mark.
Fergie 4, which of course in Star Wars terms means it's the first one. But no, it's the fourth one.
But it is an interesting one because it's like Star Wars because we're starting at the bit where, everybody remembers, which is the Manchester United start.
Exactly right. And Star Wars was smart enough to start at the place where everyone cared. Yeah.
Whereas
and then worked around it.
We're more like Rocky. So we're fighting Russians now, which is true.
Oh, we are in...
Yeah.
Because I thought, if we're Jaws, have we gone past 3D into the one that Michael Caine was in?
I think Rocky's a better analogy. I tell you why.
I would definitely agree.
Because he's got to take on Liverpool, who are like the Ivan Drago of football.
This is true.
Almost unbeatable at this
point.
Look
at him. How can Rocky stop that man?
Exactly. 6'6".
It can't happen in real life. Representing an entire culture and way of life, let alone anything else.
Well, and he's on his perch. Very much on his perch. Well played. So yes, Manchester United have now appointed Alex Ferguson. Alex Chapman Ferguson. Great name. We like that name, don't we?
We do indeed. It's a perfect nickname.
He's been an absolute sensation at Aberdeen. He's worked his way through Scottish football. He's played. He's been part-time. He's been part-time manager. He became a full-time manager, and he's taken Aberdeen to the pinnacle of Europe, beating Real Madrid in a very famous European Cup Winners' Cup final. And lots of English teams have flooded their eyelashes at him. Wolverhampton Wanderers, Arsenal, Tottenham, some say Liverpool at one point. But he himself, he's kind of looked at Manchester United and thought, I'll have a bit of that.
United, obviously... proximity might be an argument. Nature of the city, would you say as well?
Yeah, good.
An attraction, but of course, obviously the history of the club.
History, working class area, the best supported team in England.
Yeah. So get them right, you really are in clover, aren't you?
He's obviously sat in the stand in Old Trafford, isn't he?
Yes. Actually, to follow that, if Jock Stein's old advice is saying sit in the stands,
yes,
I'm going to guess that if you sit in Old Trafford, even on its worst day, you're going to say, I wouldn't mind a piece of this action.
Theatre of dreams.
Totally.
There you go. And this is only 18 months after his boss, his mentor, in many ways, you'd say, Jock Stein has passed away in Cardiff, but he's still very young. He's in his 40s here, and he's on his way to Manchester. He arrives, we spoke about it, on his own, lives in a kind of a semi-detached. Manchester United are nothing like the club we are now in the sense of like the financial powerhouse they are now. The stadium's still arguably one of the best in the country. This is a hangover from the days of Sir Matt Busby, who'd had the foresight to put the first boxes in and to have the seats behind.
It was state of the art, but of course, we know it's got problems now.
Yes.
And, an attempt to kind of replace it.
Yeah.
But its problem is that it was looking a little bit as jaded as the team were, and it was starting to feel a little bit old-fashioned.
In the footage you see now, Mark, people will recognise this, of that era, late sort of mid-80s, 80s. The Stretford end seemed to sort of stick out a little bit because there was the terraced end. You had that wonderful gas sort of thing across the top. Do you remember?
Yeah. And
that open bit where the bowl shape started. So it was a sort of a bit like the club. It had started modernising, but it had pulled over to the side.
It had.
And the tracks had come off.
And it was, it's a bit of a stuttering way to go about their business. And it was, as you say, the ground was reflecting what was happening on the pitch.
It was. They still had financial muscle. They'd still sign people like Brian Robson for millions of pounds. But they were kind of seen as, we described it as like a famous old sort of country house that had become a bit dilapidated.
And it's interesting. So you mentioned Robson. We know that there's one of his first things that he's got to deal with is McGrath, Whiteside and Robson.
That's right.
And you talked in previous episodes, it's an interesting conundrum, I'm going to guess, with Fergie.
Yeah.
Because we know later on in life, we know this man doesn't hate a glass of wine, for example.
No.
But and that the drinking culture is very much part of the working class culture from which everybody comes from, including himself. So him kind of getting the club started by stamping down on that, maybe a bit surprising.
I think, he comes from an area and an era we've spoken about where, people had a pint, especially after work, but it wasn't like it is now. I mean, beer was like 3 and 2% sometimes, you know. So it was like, and after a busy day in the docks or the mines or the mills, people went to the pub to socialise and have a beer. This was different. This was binge drinking. He used to watch them and have spies following them around Cheshire, where they went to sort of like 5 or 6 different pubs over a period of many hours. So I don't think it was the problem with it. I like the pint, but I think he was obviously fine with that, because that was part of the game. Wouldn't have even crossed his mind not to be. But he just didn't like the idea that it was binge drinking.
And this is that guy that you mentioned in one of the episodes who thought he'd come to an end of his career as a manager because he had the afternoons were free.
Yes.
And this is a similar kind of conversation about players, but this is during the peak of their careers.
Yes, exactly. So this is the first thing that he's got to sort of get over. We spoke about the fact that the infrastructure wasn't there in anything like we know now. There was no sort of real scouting network. He used to do this brilliant thing, apparently, where people say he sort of wandered up to people during training and sort of say, big club this, isn't there? You know, as if sort of discovering it, as if, you know, the amount of support they had.
Kept just occurring to him.
The goldfish bowl that, you know, manages Manchester United, the scrutiny of the press, you know, the idea of this, like I said, that this grand old club that's fallen on hard times meant that you really were under the microscope. And I think he's realised that, you know, it was a much more powerful glass than it was in Scotland.
Yeah.
You know, everything was dissected. There was, you know, the newspapers, there was columnists dedicated to Manchester United, not just in the Manchester Evening News, but in national newspapers, you know.
And not least of which is people are waiting for someone to fail at Manchester United as much as they are to be successful.
Also, Ron Atkinson
was a bigger story.
Was quite popular. People
it was quite the thing.
He was a character. He was a good manager. You know, had a brilliant spell at West Bromwich Albion. It hadn't worked for him at Manchester United in the sense that he didn't win the title, which is a big thing for them. But he'd won FA Cups. Yeah. And the fans liked him. You know, he was champagne.
He felt dynamic. Felt new.
He did.
Felt like the future a little bit there, didn't he?
He did.
The thing about Ferguson, he comes in now. We talked again about the fact that there's lots of talk about strategy, the ways that managers play. Ferguson did have a way of playing, which is basically not necessarily formations and stuff, dynamism. That's what you see about his football teams. Was that immediate with him at United?
Well, he had this thing. United, he talks about this. Their transfer kitty was dictated by season tickets. Martin Edwards wasn't going to put money into the pot, so he didn't have somebody like an Abramovich later who...
Oh, so self-fulfilling.
Self-fulfilling.
Wow.
So he had to sort of... They did have the crowds, and this goes back to the days of Busby. This is why people were such huge admirers of Sir Matt Busby. The bigger the crowds, the more money he had to spend, so he had to be successful. So it was like a self-perpetuating thing. Ferguson sort of caught that in the teeth, really. He didn't have sort of a big transfer kitty. What he had was a big support that was the historical hangover of the great Busby era. So he did have that, but he worked out very quickly that it wasn't a sugar daddy owner that was going to come along and go, you know, here's the money. Martin Edwards famously wasn't that guy, and he knew this. And his first sign-in was, interesting enough, and I'm going to ask the question, was somebody that he brought in, and he wanted to bring somebody in with a bit of experience, who'd gone to sort of bigger clubs, won things. And I'm going to put that question: who was Sir Alex Ferguson's first signing with Manchester United?
Great point.
There we go.
Because when we talk about this is setting the tone.
Setting the tone. His second signing was a belter. He signed Brian McClare from Celtic, who went on to become the first Manchester United player to score 20 goals in a season since George Best. That's how long they've been sort of in the doldrums and had a striker who would really hit the form.
So, and bit of first-hand knowledge, obviously, I guess, that if he's bringing a player down from Scotland, it's because he knows what he's going to get with his money.
What a signing that was. Brian McClare was fantastic for Manchester United.
Yes, true.
Had a long career and won lots of trophies. But he arrived as a striker, and he was a 20-goal season man, which is what Fergie needed. And that first season, people do this thing with Ferguson where they go, oh, you know, he had those 4 years and he had to win the FA Cup. But he didn't have a bad start the first year. He was pretty good. They came second the first year to Liverpool. People forget this. So that first season, 87, 88, there was an impact. There was an impact, and people were going, oh, this is okay. And he's brought in McClare. He's also brings back Mark Hughes, which is a big signing for him. And he's also, over these next few years, signed some really interesting people that become hugely synonymous with Manchester United. So he signs sort of a Geordie who came to the Wall's End youth club system, Steve Bruce. I think he signs him from Norwich.
They're players that are very much not the blank checkbook kind of idea. You know, he's bought within his means, hasn't he? With
yes,
those guys.
he has. And these players, I mean, he doesn't always get it right. He buys Ralphie Milne from Dundee United. That doesn't work. No. And it's a shame because Ralphie Milne was a really good player for Dundee United. But he's kind of held up then as the symbol of the failed transfer dealings of Ferguson. This is the kind of pressure he was under. People forget this. After that first season where, you know, this green shoots of recovery, But Liverpool is still winning the title, which Manchester United hate, right?
Yes.
Obviously, for obvious reasons, because we've spoke about it in Scousers and Manx and Scousers. And Ralphie Miller hasn't worked. But they're quick to forget Brian McClare was a great signing.
Yeah.
So there's that going on. And then the following season is a really tough one because this is the 88-89 season. It's mediocre. They come 11th. And that's the season, which every football fan of our era remembers, where Arsenal win the title in the final minutes of the final game of the season up at Anfield. Michael Thomas. Which was one of the huge moments of the 80s for all of us growing up.
Yeah, because, of course, we actually had a genuine finish, brushing the tape across the line to get us.
Before that, it was like Everton in the mid-80s had a little... But it was Liverpool.
Basically, most of the time, you're seeing the cup being brought out before the last game.
At Anfield.
The new champions. In fact, they just left it there.
They did, yeah. I mean, Liverpool dominated it in a way that's almost difficult. A bit like Manchester United did later on in Ferguson's career, where they were just expected to win the title every year. And in this season, 88-89, it's an incredible season, bloody well. There was a tragedy of Hillsborough, and so the game they had to replay. Arsenal up in Liverpool, and Liverpool almost unthinkable. They only had to draw or not lose by 2 goals, which, like I said, almost impossible to imagine. And in the last dying moments of the game, Arsenal score this goal, and Arsenal win the title. And obviously, for the first time, Liverpool have won a title and Arsenal win it. So Manchester United, this is like a double whammy for them.
Yes.
It's like the only team that we should be knocking Liverpool off the pitch is us. And
if it's not them, it should be us. And then when it wasn't that.
Yes. Following season, which is the 89-90 season, he's got to win something.
Yeah.
There's a feeling in the air that he has to win something. And Ferguson himself feels that I haven't quite got the team to win a title yet. But he actually says, I think I can win a cup. Because obviously, like I said, Mark Hughes is back, McClare's there. He's even he's put a bid in for Paul Gascoigne. It's the one player he laments not getting. But he actually says, and he says this thing, he goes, I think we'll be all right this year. I think we'll be competitive. And he thinks, I've got a chance.
As you say, 6 games away from a trophy style thing, isn't it? There is an element of that.
It's that thing where he's thinking in 89-90, he's going, we'll challenge, we'll be the top end of the table, and we might nick a cup. That's what he's thinking, right? He has the most stinking start to a season ever. He talks about this game, there's near Palace, I think it was, on a dank Manchester night, where he says they lose 2-0, the crowd are booing, they're on his case. And I can talk about personal experience here, because what happened was, I go to Lorette de Mar in 1989 on holidays, and I meet some people from Manchester, mates.
You were that exotic. Yeah. I knew it.
And I become very pally, and I'm still big mates with them to this day. The 2 Daves, Paul and Mark, and they're still season ticket holders, and they've grown up as kids watching Manchester United. And I go to stay in Manchester with them, and they take me to games. And this shows a different time in football. I'm able to go and watch Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm able to go to games. And what's happened that season is Manchester City have come up from the old second division, and they've just signed Clive Allen. And I go to Arthur Albiston's testimonial. And Manchester City win this game 2-0, packed Old Trafford, and I'm there. And they are chanting Fergie out all through the game. I'll never forget it as long as I live.
I mean, that's technically a day off for everybody.
Absolutely.
I mean, even the crowd could go like, okay, let's set that aside for this. This is a celebration of a grand old name. Yeah. Let's all enjoy this together. No, they use it as a platform.
They use it as a platform. The City fans, I remember in the away end, they're going mad and they're singing Fergie out. They have a good start to the season. They beat Arsenal. I think it's 4-1 with the champions. I was there. Mark Hughes scores. It was his season back. Neil Webb has been signed. So they've just signed Neil Webb.
Oh, okay, for Forest.
He's got Forest. And you think, it could be a decent start. But the wheels quickly come off, and right up till Christmas, he's having a torrid time. He's not winning games. The fans are really on his back. There's a banner goes up, one of the most famous banners now in English football history. X many years, Tara Fergie, which everybody knows. So he's really, the heat is on him. He thinks, well, as long as I have a good run in the Cups, I think they're out of the League Cup at this point. So he thinks FA Cup. And the third round of the FA Cup, he's drawn out of the hat, and he's got to ring a mate of his, or his mate of his is ringing in the press to find out his reaction. He's watching the draw, and they draw Nottingham Forest away, who are arguably
at this stage
the best cup team in England.
Yes, that's right. So they're quite good at these knockout competitions.
So in the film, in the boxing analogy of this film now, he's just been knocked out.
He has.
And they're counting, and they're up to 9 in the count.
He's looking across at the coach. He's got the towel coming off his shoulder, but he's waving him off, isn't he? Will he get up, John? Will he carry on fighting?
Tune in to find out. Welcome back, Fergie 4 Part 2.
Right. I'm not going anywhere. We're stopping now. You asked a question right at the start.
I did.
This is setting the whole thing up. Who is this guy? Who was his first signing? Is this going to be one of the most symbolic names, or a rude word that sounds like symbolic names because of the way he played, of all of Manchester United's history? You tell us who it was.
Our producer John, and we're going to shout out. Go on, John. Who do you think
Johnny
it is?
Fives. You having a go?
I thought it might be Steve Bruce.
No, it's not Steve Bruce. Not far off. It is somebody that won 2 European Cups.
Go on.
First black player to play for England, Viv Anderson.
Viv Anderson.
Yeah.
Took him on. It was a really clever idea to tell John to do the wrong answer because it's much more dramatic like that. So yes, of course, because obviously Viv from Nottingham Forest again as well.
Yeah.
A crucial player for Ferguson, and again one of those guys that you could see as uniting its pomp players because he did have that dynamism and that energy, didn't he? As a player?
Well, he was a world-class defender.
Totally.
I mean, they talk about him at Forest. They say like he was a phenomenal footballer, sort of heading towards the tail end of his career at United, but extremely popular.
But what a job he did, didn't he?
And extremely popular in the dressing room.
Yes.
A consummate pro.
Smart
signing. So, yeah, Viv Anderson. So it gives you an idea of... But these are the things that weren't talked about at that time.
No, quite.
It's much more Ralphie Milne. That's the signing they don't talk about.
It's a good point.
And they're at Forest. Everybody remembers it. Forest are the heavy favourites under Brian Clough. There's all the history of that. Brian Clough has never won the FA Cup. That's the one trophy that eluded him all his career. The FA Cup then was so... big. It was we all know it's the biggest game in certainly English football, if not it's in some respects for a long time in European football. It was just a huge day for us all, from kids watching in our pajamas. It's just starting to not be the European Cup in that sense.
Yeah.
And poor Clough, he died before really the European Cup has become the apex of all domestic and how you're measured and judged now. But then he was desperate to win the FA Cup. So it's a match Forest really would have wanted to win. And United have so many injuries, and they have so many injuries. Who do they have to pick up front, Mark?
Was this Robbins?
Yeah.
So Mark Robbins comes in. I mean, basically a kind of eternal substitute, wasn't he, Mark Robbins?
Yeah. And he has to play him up front. Hughes, I think, plays that game. But what happens is Forest dominate the match. It's one of those matches that's live on TV. So I remember watching it, and you think it's just inevitable Forest going to score. It's a bit of a cut-up, mucky pitch, but they don't score.
No. And
then suddenly, they don't score. And even when you're watching it, you're thinking, something's in the air here. And he talks about this, and Manchester United fans talk about this. Their fans that day were incredible. Forest fans talk about it. They just didn't stop singing all game.
No, and... Oh, the irony, because the last time, just a few minutes ago, we're talking about Fergie out, a testimonial match. So there's a change of attitude.
Well, a lot of people say this is the first real time that United fans felt there's a massive difference between the away and home support.
Well, classically, and this is what football fans talk about all the time, it's two different worlds, isn't it? Being an away man, an away guy and a home guy is two different things.
And they sing all game, and, it's become one of the great moments in Manchester United history, no doubt. But Robbins scores a goal.
Solskjaer looking.
Yes.
In kind
red
of
hair,
features.
curlyish red, cherubic red hair.
Sort of diminutive for a striker.
Yes. And he scores this goal, and Manchester United famously win 1-0. Now, forevermore in football folklore, it was that if he'd lost that day,
he was out.
He'd have been sacked. And it's very easy now for Martin Edwards to say, well, no, we were never going to do it. But if they'd lost that game, the furore would have been another trophy-less season.
Yes, because...
an awful start to the league.
That's the problem. There's your cup for you, knockout football.
Yeah.
Because you're putting everything on a game, aren't you, each time. Yeah. Whereas, like the league, it's the marathon and the sprint comparison. Yeah. And if that early, there's no cup.
There's no cup. And,
no run.
This is a really, really fine Nottingham Forest team. A really, really winning League Cups and all sorts. This is like that Clough, the great Clough second team, Forest fans call it. So this is no mean feat to go there.
Quite.
And the next game is a banana skin where they have to play Hereford United away.
Right.
So
they've done it before,
the
haven't
Manchester
they?
boys say to me, well, look, far from Hereford, Merthyr's about sort of 35 miles, Merthyr, 40 miles. Come and meet us at the game. So I
think Merthyr's close to everywhere, John.
I know. So I go to this game.
Particularly this podcast.
And I what happens is, I don't know what I was thinking here. I send off for a ticket, and I get a ticket for the Hereford end, right? Now, obviously, Hereford have a fierce rivalry with Welsh clubs. And I get this ticket. And I meet my Manchester mates, and they go, oh, we've got you a United end ticket. And I was thinking, this is like 89, 90, peak period sort of British football.
Trouble.
Traders culture. I go around the Hereford end and say in this accent, does anybody want to buy my ticket?
Nice!
Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. So immediately I'm sort of surrounded by sort of really angry.
You had your Cardiff shirt on, didn't you? Of course you did,
West Country people quite angry. And what I've got on is, the boys remember this day, I've got a naff jumper on. And I always remember as I'm standing there, this lad goes, that should be taff, and pokes me in the chest.
That's quite good.
It's quite good.
That's quite
And my
good.
brain goes, you got to get out of here. So anyway, I sort of did a quick retreat. I'm happy to pay for the ticket. I thought, I'll lose the fight.
Did you throw the daffodils?
No, I didn't.
Throw your daffodils on the floor.
Throw it away and run away.
Yeah,
Daffodils the wrong word. Throw your leeks in the air. So anyway, I scoot off back on the other end, and I go into the game, and Manchester United win this ding-dong game, I think 3-2. So even they in Hereford, this
they carry with them they're a classic FA Cup team.
Yeah. Or it might have been 1-0. I can't remember the score. Anyway, there's a game where they don't dominate this game. They win the game.
Right.
Somebody would write in, which was good. Write in, tell me, because I was at that game. Then they play Newcastle, I think, and they win that 3-2. That's the 3-2 game.
Right.
A ding-dong, but that was on live on telly. Then they win Sheffield United, and they win that. And then they play Oldham in a semi where, do you remember at Main Road, which is an astonishing, they go at each other again, 1-0 down, 1-0. So there's been...
And Oldham are this kind of weirdly revitalised club at this particular stage, aren't they? Exactly.
Really good team, got a really good bunch of players. And, all through this journey, the country is absolutely obsessed with Manchester United now at this point. Are they going to win this FA Cup? And every game, there's huge pressure on it, huge media coverage. The games are all tight. There's games where Manchester United losing, and there's games they draw, and the games they win. But you did feel in your gut they're going to do this, because every time they just get over the line, if you know what I mean.
And here lies his problem at this stage is that whereas there was Fergie out, and then there's this win. But of course, it's always the way. The closer you're getting to the cup final, the more pressure's now on you.
Yes.
And now it's going to feel worse than getting knocked out against Forest in the first round if you blow it at the kind of like the final fence.
Exactly. So there's a semi-final with Oldham, and it's at Main Road, and it's like, I think they play the replay there as well, but they get through that, and they get to a final. One of the great FA Cup finals ever.
Yes.
1990. At Wembley, a hot day. I watched it in Merthyr. Again, the pubs are packed for the FA Cup. They're packed. Oh, they're even the pub. And we watched this game. And this FA Cup game is really famous because Palace put on a fantastic performance, and a young Ian Wright comes on as substitute.
That's right.
And he talks about this day. He goes, I'm gonna do some damage here. I'm gonna show to the world what I am. Ian Wright, famously, was still playing on the Hackney Marshes, I think at 2021.
Yeah.
He gets picked up by Palace, and he's
one of the latest professional starters that the game had known. Yeah,
I think so. And he talks about this day, and I can remember watching this final, and I think, again, United 3-2 down and come back, and they managed to cling on. And it's the story of this whole campaign of just by hook or by crook, they're just getting over the line.
Yeah.
They're just, because what's happening is Ferguson's imprint on the club, this mentality is starting to finally take hold. That this team, what we all thought later called Fergie time, and they just run out of time, and they don't know how to lose. Manchester United will score. Manchester United always score, the famous line before you can see the birth of this in this FA Cup run, where they keep winning games and coming back from.
And it's amazing.
From the death.
It's because what it isn't, though, that part of it definitely. But what it isn't, they're dogged.
Yes.
This is not the United. When they're in their pomp later on, which we'll talk about in Fergie 7, 8 and 9.
Fergie 12.
That's right. Yeah, we've got to get the double figures, and we probably will.
Well, we should for his trophy.
Exactly. To fall one short would be a terrible thing. We don't want to do
He's doing what he is. He's our Second World War in historic history podcast, isn't he? It's never ending. You know what I mean?
He's just going to keep going. No, there's 3 episodes in what he's done after he's retired. Yeah. So there is that in it as well. Yeah. But no, this is what he comes to do with United is you're beaten often by United by energy, pace, dynamism, and that kind of stuff. He's got players that can do that. Every one of these games
is attritional.
They've had to dig in.
Yes, I couldn't agree
more. Trench war.
And there's all this other things happen that people forget. Liverpool win the title again that year, 1990. They come 13th. It's his poorest.
So it's still mediocre.
It's really me. I think it's the worst season he ever has at United in league position. So he's got to win this FA Cup.
Yeah.
It's not, he can't lose in the final even.
He is losing.
To win it. He is losing.
And he's losing.
On a sunny day at Wembley. And I'm in this pub. It's called the Butcher's Arms in a place called Ponsticket in Merthyr, right? And it's actually called Ponsticket.
Do you know what? I'm glad you said that.
And I'm watching this thing, and I'll never forget as long as I live. When United equalised the third goal, The Manchester United fans are in there because Manchester United are this world club, and there's a bit like Liverpool.
Yeah.
There's always fans of them in there. The Manchester United fans in there jump up in the air, and I can never. It was the first time I'd ever seen people throwing their beer and pouring beers over themselves. That was the first time I ever seen it. You know, where they were just literally going, enjoy. That's the kind of game it was.
If they knew what they were coming,
Yeah.
if they knew what was coming
They were
with beer in the
trendsetters.
stadium, they wouldn't have been spilling any beer though.
They wouldn't have. And the match finishes 3-3. It's one of the great FA Cup
Yes.
finals. A lot of people say it's one of the, if not the greatest, 6 goals. It's a ding-dong battle.
And Palace genuinely unlucky not to have won it on the day. That was their moment.
They could have won that.
Yeah,
they could have won
totally.
it. And then, you'll love this, right? There's a replay, and it's the most dull, boring
It's
one.
terrible, wasn't it? It really was. It was. You were so set up. I remember distinctly watching that game and genuinely thinking, I fancied Palace,
Yeah.
funny enough, because they were that kind of team. You're getting a lot of that kind of Palace now.
Yeah.
Is where on the day they're like the best team you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they were playing a bit like that in those days, and nothing about United on that day said, We've got this situation under control.
No.
It's back to that point that
Yeah.
they could. It was attritional, and they made it work. And then you hope that you're going to get more of the same.
And it was the complete opposite. There was a goal by a guy called Lee Martin,
Yeah.
who kind of holds a place in Fergie's sort of career, like John Hewitt with Aberdeen. You know, not the most famous of his
Yeah,
players.
but great young winger, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And he got a bad injury.
fullback, wasn't he?
Oh, well, I think he
Started in the wing and then came. Yeah,
because I think he had a bad leg injury
yeah,
didn't he, at some point. Yeah.
And he scores a goal in a dull sort of
Yeah.
replay at Wembley, but it didn't matter.
No.
Because at that, I'll never forget this. At this moment, Fergie was the most joyous, relieved but joyous man, and the fans.
Yes.
I can remember my mates from Manchester telling me when they won that, they said they remember Piccadilly Gardens that night, tens of thousands of people out, Manchester United fans. And a guy, I remember my mate Dave Farrell telling me, there's a guy on a pole, like climbed up the Classic, and he's just going over and over, we won the cup, EINN, you know, and he's going over and over, and he was like, it was a release.
Yeah.
They all kind of felt something was happening, finally. That Fergie had won his first trophy. There was the shoots of young teams. He'd famously gone into United, and he got. He regrets this. He got rid of Nobby Stiles, who was part of the scouting team, but a really famous guy called Jack Fallows, who's a legend in Manchester. He set him up to look over the scouting regime. A young Ryan Wilson, who later changed in Ryan Giggs, has been found.
Right.
There's players who've been picked up. There's a young lad called Nicky Butt. There's a young lad Paul. They're all been brought into the system. He set up the scouting system. They've won the FA Cup in 1990. The wheels are starting to set in motion for Manchester United.
It's weird. He's arguably, in the grand scheme of things, gone a year early.
Yeah.
By winning a very dogged cup campaign.
Yeah.
And an even worse replay.
Yeah. So there's a moment, I think, in football clubs' histories where if they get a taste for it, like Arsenal at that time, that when they won the title in '89, they won it a few years later under George Graham. So there's a team there. They win in FA Cups. They win in League Cups. They get into the rhythm of winning trophies
and serial winners and
like say Blackburn. Blackburn sort of like came, won trophy and
had
went.
their moment. Yeah, exactly. That's like dip in and dip out. But of course, as you say, what you're doing as well is you're reigniting that memory.
Yes.
For a crowd that got used to mediocre or worse.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden they're being reminded about what success is all about. So you've got to maintain it.
And it all comes back to that thread where he goes to say Rangers and he goes, I know what a big club expects.
Yes.
They expect to win every match and they expect to win trophies. And he's got that. And now that he's got the first trophy, he's got, right, he's awakened the giant.
And he's come off the floor, he's come off the canvas, he's wiped the blood away from his nose.
And he's caught him.
And he's caught him with an absolute right cross. The crowd is shocked. And suddenly
But it's a big moment. And what he does over the next few years, which we will cover in more episodes, is for every year after that, he kind of wins something. By hook or by crook, he wins like European Cup in his cup, then he wins a League Cup. But what we can really cover in depth is he knows in his heart that he hasn't quite got the team to win a title. So they have this incredible season, which was set up the end of Fergie 4, where they're dominating the league. We all remember it's the last year of what we all call the old Football League system, which was Division 1 to Division 4. The following year, they were going to bring in the Premier League. In 1990, that summer after they win the FA Cup, they had Italia 90, kind of changed football. We all feel it. Gaza's tears. suddenly the middle classes are going, ooh, what's this thing?
Oh, football isn't just for football fans anymore, is it?
So 1990, there's people on. I always remember coming back on to listening to Radio 1 and people were going, oh, I watched the football last night. Oh, and Gaza, you wanted to give him a hug because he was crying. And I was thinking, I've never heard football being spoken about Radio 1 before. When Radio 1 was just like music. So it's starting to seep into culture.
I nearly walked in the road in Wardour Street when I was in Soho during 1990 when I saw a young lady walking towards me in a football shirt.
There you go.
It made literally no sense, of course, now, but it's like, why has my thing arrived in the middle of of sort of fashionable West End?
And we keep talking about timing with Fergie, like the timing, we'll go into Aberdeen, doing the oil and gas boom in the northeast of Scotland. Now he's got the timing where, famously, the Sky deal is done. We've gone from the mid-'80s where there were strikes and the two terrestrial channels paid peanuts in comparison to what they pay now for football. What's happening here is Sky are gearing up. Murdoch's going to do the famous phone call to Alan Sugar, and Sugar's going to say to him, blow the rest out of the water. Money's coming into the game. The profile of the game is going to grow. So, of all the football clubs...
It needs a team. It needs one team to represent all of this change.
On a worldwide stage.
And guess what? Come 1991 onwards, they're going to get it.
The giant is awakening. The following season, again, not particularly good in the league. This is 1991, but they have this amazing run in the European Cup Winners' Cup, and again win a brilliant final against a really good Barcelona team. So in finals of Europe, Ferguson so far,
knockout football again.
Yeah, has beaten Real Madrid and Barcelona,
and he's doing nicely. He brought in Brian Kidd at that stage as well, which is interesting.
He's got Brian Kidd there because Archie Knox and him. So Archie's a bit, sort of Scottish and a bit homesick. He brings Brian Kidd, who's Manchester through and through.
That's right, and he's been around the club.
The Kidd family are really famous.
He gets Schmeichel and he gets Paul Parker.
Schmeichel comes in 1990, big signing, and people forget over in Rotterdam. It's seen as such a pivotal moment, not just football culture. It's worth a pod. We'll do a show on Rotterdam 91 because it's about music, it's about fashion, it's about football. It feels like Manchester's taking centre stage in British culture.
Totally. Although I would point out just as a kind of passing shot, 91 is the year he also went to Montpellier and started his interest in wine.
Yes.
He took a visit out there, picked up a couple of bottles. In 2014, Christie's sold his wine collection.
Yeah.
In 3 lots, in 3 auctions and 229 lots, £2.2 million.
Oof.
I tell you what, that's a lot of bottles of Oyster Bay.
That's not bad, is it? Well, do you know, it was a nice connection to end this one, this Fergie 4, part 4.
Yes.
He wins the Super Cup, right? The European Super Cup. He wins the League Cup. He beats Forest, and Leeds pip him for this title in '92. And he's so frustrated because they've dominated the league that season. I always remember coming back on a bus from Glasgow, and they lose over Easter. They have a terrible Easter, and there's people on the bus who are like Liverpool fans cheering and I remember it vividly. There's a few Leeds fans on there. They go, "We could win this," and Leeds do win it. And the Premier League start in the following year. And what a connection! Leeds, there's a certain player at Leeds who has helped them win the title, and that same player has played for Montpellier, and he goes to collect him. He's had the conversation, and we'll start Fergie 5 in a few weeks' time with the player that he feels is the final piece in the jigsaw, and his name is... Eric Cantona. Remember, you can subscribe, download, whatever. Join us again.
We don't charge you nothing for the privilege of that.
For the Fergie Odyssey.
I'm not running up them steps in Philadelphia. They're going to make me breathless.